Thank you for joining IAB There.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Goldstein, EVP Member Engagement and Development here at the IAB. Welcome to IAB There, our daily live stream in which we connect the digital advertising ecosystem. On today's show, we're going to be discussing activity versus progress. Are we really making a difference in diversity, equity, and inclusion? And joining me for this conversation is our special guest, Alvin Bowles, Vice President, Business Engineering and Partner Solutions at Facebook. Alvin is a passionate leader for DEI and works to drive meaningful change within Facebook and the digital media industry. Alvin, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to see you, Cheryl. We're old friends, and it's
Old
wonderful to
friends.
see you. And happy to be joining you today for this conversation.
Yeah, you're the perfect person, I think, to do a check-in on how the industry is doing because you've been at this for a long time. And before we go into the activities and initiatives and things that Facebook is doing and you're doing, just talk a little bit about your role at Facebook. So you're a global role, you're in charge of strategic business partners. What does that mean?
Yeah. So again, thank you for having me, and thank you to the IAB for continuing to keep this series of conversations going. I think you all have done a great job, particularly during this pandemic, of keeping people informed and engaged across the board. Specifically for me, so I run our business engineering and partner solutions team, and we focus on helping businesses grow for today and build for tomorrow. Most of the individuals that work on our team are comprised of two different groups. We have a group of solutions engineers that are focusing on what we call last mile or first mile technological solutions that are built really from a bespoke perspective, but provide scalable solutions to businesses of all sizes. And so this team actually is able to write code on top of our core product. And we are headquartered in North America, but we have teams that do this all around the world, and that we think globally, but act locally, and that there are different opportunities to address in LATAM, EMEA, and APAC, which actually makes us really helpful in making sure we're bridging the gaps for what our clients need. The partner solutions side of it is much more akin to what a global partnerships team would be. It encompasses everything from business development with some of the industry leaders, whether it be measurement or consulting or things of that nature across the board, to some of the partner management solutions that we have across the board, whether it be commerce or business messaging. A lot of this is monetizing a lot of these relationships. So while we all know my good friend Carolyn Everson runs sales, we run the partnerships that runs adjacent to some of the activities that are all about monetizing relationships on our platform to really unlock opportunities to allow us to be able to deliver solutions across the board. So
You really help a lot of the small businesses that are using the Facebook platform or platforms to drive their business. Is that fair to say that a lot of those
that is
small
fair to say.
business? Yeah.
That is fair to say. I think that what we focus on is, we call it businesses of all sizes. And so I'll
Okay.
work with your multinationals and your Fortune 100 companies for certain, because
Right.
they certainly have very bespoke needs associated with what they're doing regarding data sets and privacy and everything of that nature. But we also want to treat individuals that, whether or not you've got $1 million or $1, we believe you should get a fair value exchange on that dollar. And many times, because businesses don't have the wherewithal to do a lot of these things themselves, they don't necessarily have a large engineering staff, they don't have JavaScript engineers on staff, we are able to support those activities by giving people solutions that they don't necessarily pay for. Oftentimes we're transacting and allowing individuals to partner with each other, but we have nothing to do with being in the middle of that. We hope that those opportunities allow them to transact on our platform more effectively, but we also encourage them to be able to do whatever's best for their business. Certainly things that you and I learned back in our AOL days is that you don't sell anybody that you don't think they'll want to come back for more. And
Right.
so we're
Right.
able to make that opportunity with engaging with us easier.
Right.
Smaller businesses that don't necessarily have the same wherewithal that others do from a resourcing perspective, we want to make it easy to do so. And so everything
Yeah.
from blueprint certifications to understanding how to make sure we train individuals how to leverage our platform that deliver against their KPIs. That's what we're most focused on.
Yeah. I mean, your platform, the Instagram, WhatsApp, all Facebook, was really a lifesaver for so many of these small
Mhm.
businesses and that were retail outlets or had to pivot and found a home, virtually or the digital world because of your platforms and the ability for them to immediately connect with customers and sell their products. So during this COVID, it was pretty remarkable to see how many companies were able to adjust and be able to stay in business because you had their platforms to empower their business.
Absolutely. We saw
Yeah.
the sort of the gap in e-commerce close quite significantly. We saw a rise in e-commerce, whether interest and also execution on our platform really in the last few months eclipsed what we saw in the last 5 years. And
Wow.
so I think that the rise of individuals that were looking for a very specific relationship with customers, to learn more about them, to understand their needs, to understand how to better service whatever they may be interested in focusing on, and has been interesting for us. I think that the key thing for me, and I think about our specific group, the mantra that I always talk about is our job is to be able to decrease the distance between innovation and execution. So you have an innovative idea, and tons of people have great ideas, but oftentimes you get stuck on the execution of that. If we can actually
Right.
provide solutions, whether that they're ours or through our network of Facebook marketing partners, which are tremendously well integrated businesses that understand our platform as well as we do, if we can actually help decrease the distance between that, little gem of an idea to how that might become executed, then we've done our job. And so that is the biggest thing that we're thinking through. And commerce is one example, but there's so many others.
Right.
Creative is another. Business messaging is another. Ad tech
Hmm.
continues to be an important part of our ecosystem. And the idea is that we're trying to stay focused on giving people solutions that meet their needs, not our own.
Right. Meet them where they are. I always hear Carolyn Everson say that as well. Meet our customers where they
Yeah,
are,
that's
and then
absolutely.
provide us. Yeah.
We're singing from the
S-
same hymnal, so
yeah. Yeah.
in the same choir. So that is not unexpected.
So with you have about 600 people reporting up to you globally. How do you focus on creating an inclusive environment, especially with, this work at home kind of situation? What are some of the things that you've been doing to just have your team feel connected to each other and connected to the company?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. I think that the thing for us is trying to make sure we understand that individuals have been all going through a very difficult time. I certainly have been doing on myself. We've all had a very rough year,
Yeah.
and giving people the ability to understand what is best suited for them. Running a global team, it's easy to get focused on the time zone that you actually work in, and not realizing that um, individuals may be in the middle of the night. You may maybe in the middle of tea time for our sisters and brothers across the pond, and it becomes very difficult. I think that for me, we've done a couple of things: is making sure we're rotating who is actually leading meetings on global teams. So it isn't always
Wow.
the APAC team that's on the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're not able to be their best in that regard.
Right.
That's one thing. The second is, while I think we're all zoomed out, is that there
Hmm.
are opportunities where sometimes a phone call will suffice as opposed to being on camera. As much as we love to see each other, and I love seeing you today, there are times when just a phone call will suffice, when it is an opportune time for individuals to be on camera, and you can actually be more focused if in fact I don't have to be worried about, am I camera ready. That's the second thing.
Mm.
um, the third is that we've also invested in making sure people have the resources they need to be at home and comfortable, whether that be through enhanced internet services, ring lights if you need to have your glam squad ready, or making sure we're giving people the resources that they need to be able to support family members. I think that this is a very difficult time, and the pandemic is something that is serious, and we've lost a lot of people around the
Yeah.
world, and friends and family, and God bless everybody that's listening to keep their family and friends safe. But having a level of flexibility around that, I think, has been challenging for everyone, and just trying to just being able to be human.
Yeah.
This is a very difficult time. I think that along with being very specific about goals, and allowing the teams to be able to push back if they feel as if the goals are too stretch, or not necessarily realistic, and allowing individuals that are on the front lines of these things to be able to actually contribute in ways that are meaningful. That for me becomes interesting. And then you can have these conversations about, there is also a DEI sort of overlay to this in terms of
Right.
you're focusing on, this has just been a quite a year. So many things have happened in the world, and politically, emotionally, racially, civil unrest and what have you. And so giving people the space to be able to feel how they feel, and to get involved in ways that they believe that they can be passionate about in terms of just changing our industry. And it happens really one conversation at a time. So I think that trying to give people the space to do that.
That's a great transition to the conversation that I want to dive into, which is around the DEI space. And you've been at this a long time. We worked together at AOL in the early 2000s, where you were overseeing Black Voices.
Right.
Then you were at BET. I was over at Interactive One, I think around the time you were at BET. And we both know it was like fighting for pennies, like it was just like shouting from the mountaintop and no one was listening. And we're out there fighting for pennies. Have you seen that change? I mean, I would hope that it has. And how has it changed from those days to where we are today?
Yeah, I think
In
that,
terms of brands willing to step in and spend money there, and the attention that I think this demographic deserves.
yeah, I think that there has been some change. I think that our ambition has outpaced the results that we have, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with being aspirational about equality. And I think that that is an important thing for us to stay focused on. I definitely have been at this a long time and worked on both the general market and multicultural side of the business for a long time. Thus, all the gray that has seeped in here, which I'm proud of, the miles that I have on that I put into this. But I'll say that what has been interesting for me is that there is a purity of intent. And I believe that this past summer was a wake-up call for many people that could no longer turn a blind eye to what was very plain, and that they were seeing it with their own eyes and not just hearing these stories from people that said, hey, I've been mistreated, or I've had a challenging experience. It's hard to deny things when you see them from your own eyes. And so there are so many names to mention: Breonna Taylor, George Floyd,
Right.
and so many others, too many to really mention, which is actually the sad
Right.
part of it. But I think that there was an awakening here in the US, but also around the world. And so I do believe that individuals are trying to figure out, well, what does that mean? You certainly have seen the rise of empowering DEI departments. Those companies that didn't have heads of diversity are focusing on them and trying to give more resources to the departments that did exist. And I think that part of this is also making sure that we're focusing on measurable, tangible goals. It is certainly hard to manage what you don't measure. I mean, we grew up in sales, and so imagine if you just sort of went out there and sold, and you were going to get paid whatever you got paid without somebody saying that you got a quota or a goal that we were expecting you to hit. I think that those are the things that we need to stay focused on. There are qualitative and quantitative goals associated with this, and it is not a problem that's monolithic. You certainly isn't a one size fits all solution. I think that each of these things are ones that you've got to enroll the community, but it also isn't on the underrepresented community to solve all the problems of the industry that they're trying to solve. It does take to be a partnership. My expectation is that we're querying communities, to figure out what we believe to be best suited to be able to move the numbers in ways that we believe are meaningful. But it isn't just about, I need to do university recruiting and let's bring more people in the industry. And one of the things that we've actually thought about here at the company is that there's a mantra that we talk about called find, grow, keep. And that it actually really focusing on different levels of how we actually diversify this industry across both psychographic and demographic lines. And that you certainly want to attract more people to the industry. But what you also want to do is make sure that you're actually, allowing individuals to be grown and mentored in ways that are meaningful, and then to keep them in this industry. Whether or not they stay at Facebook or not is a personal choice for individuals,
Right.
but we do want them to stay in this industry. And so the only way to do that is to stay focused on giving people a community and fellowship. And there's so many, organizations that are doing a great job of it. IAB has been great with it. There are companies like AdColor and
Right.
others that are really making sure we're highlighting, one, accomplishments, but also giving people a community to
Yeah.
feel like I'm not out here by myself. And I think
I
that
think you're
that's,
making a really great point, because I see this all the time. I call it growth by 1,000 seeds, where all these
yes,
companies, instead of death by 1,000 cuts, it's growth by 1,000 seeds. So I see a lot of companies under-resourced and without clear goals, just starting to do things, and they're thinking that activity is progress. So we'll do a campus recruiting, or we're going to
exactly.
donate some money to this organization, or we're going to, and all these disparate little, planting a little seed here or there. And at the IAB, what we've been focused on is, let's pull those seeds together and plant a tree. Let's try
Yes,
and get, like, what are one or two, maybe three things that we can do, and if we pool resources and work together, we can actually make something happen, plant a tree and start seeing progress, as
absolutely.
opposed to all these little seeds that individual companies are off doing. And fine, it's going to take a little time for each one to nurture their little seeds, but we can get faster further if we do things collectively and create community and provide support, which is what we're looking to do, is support for the industry. It's very hard to expand your recruiting efforts when you have a person in charge of recruiting. It's
Yeah,
very
it's not
hard to
enough.
cover lots of different types of schools when you have a person doing campus recruiting for you, and
Absolutely.
you have zero people who are there to help teach people about the industry. So at the IAB, we're trying to bring companies together to say, what are the two or three things we could be doing that would drive meaningful change? So I know Facebook is very committed to making a difference. You've done a lot of things internally. Let's touch on some of the, just to share, because I think this is great thinking for anyone who's looking to do more. What are some of the things that Facebook has put into place to help drive diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So we have, a great chief diversity officer by the name of Maxine Williams, who's a good friend and also somebody who's been at the company for about 7 years and done a really great job moving the workforce forward. And we've split up our activities into workforce diversity, and that we're focusing on the employees that work here, and then also what we're doing for the community. I'll start with the community, and then I'll finish with some of the things that we focused on, internally. We've focused really last year on a lot of outwardly facing programs, one of which is called Elevate. And Elevate is about focusing on a Black and Latinx communities, and focusing on trying to get those businesses certified and teaching them how to utilize tools on our platform across the board. We're going into communities all around the country, and this is primarily a domestic facing program, but we're also thinking about how to think about this throughout the world, in terms of just understanding there isn't an aspiration or ambition gap. There's an access gap, and some of that access is to information of just, well, if I were to start a campaign leveraging our platform or any other digital campaign, what are the things that I need to understand that we're dealing with? This isn't about likes or I want followers and things of that nature. If I'm a business and I'm trying to transact on our platform, we're trying to figure out the best way to be able to do that in meaningful ways, which I think is really, really interesting for us. We also had a program over the holidays, speaking of commerce, called Buy Black Friday. And we were focusing on highlighting Black and brown and people of color owned businesses, coinciding with the largest retail period of the year, to be able to highlight businesses of color all across the US, whether that be the candle shop in Harlem or the health and beauty businesses that are really focused on a specific community, or the flower shop in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so the idea is to make sure that you're trying to highlight businesses of all sizes. And we talked about at the beginning that I'm focused on both large businesses as well as small businesses. And the idea is to really focus on how do we actually allow those businesses to transact on our platform and learn something about who their core audience is. You may think who your core consumer is, but you'll find more about that when you're actually putting it out there and having individuals having access to, your goods and services. The other piece that we've been focusing on is what we're calling Blueprint certification. And Blueprint is a Facebook program that awards credentials to individuals who demonstrate advanced level proficiency in various aspects of digital marketing with Facebook products. Throughout this program, we're focusing on 100,000 scholarships to Black learners, really focusing on their digital careers. And that's the biggest thing for us, and trying to make sure we're giving people access to the tools. And so the focus for us is really making sure that we're democratizing access to, I'll call it just consumers. We think about the mission of our company in that we're focusing on building community and bringing people closer together. And it's done through the democratization of content. We believe that we have a responsibility to focus on democratization of education from a digital platform perspective, and that is encompassed in this program called Blueprint, of which my team is very much involved in. We love it. We think it's a very interesting program, and it has the ability to scale. And I know we talk about a lot of D&I stuff from a North America perspective,
Right.
but we know that this is an opportunity globally across the board. And we think that these programs allow us to be able to scale. I mean, we've got 3 billion people on our platforms, and we've got, millions and millions of advertisers and hundreds and thousands of partners. The key for us is to understand how best to be able to do that in meaningful ways across the board. So we're very excited about these programs, and that is just a few examples of what we're doing in the community. And we've also have a grant program. And so last year we gave away awarded over $100 million to small businesses, specifically focusing on communities of color. We invested another $75 million in ad credits to businesses that identified as minority owned. And then we also focused on creating a specific hub on Facebook to focus on creators of color, to make sure that, again, as we start talking about the democratization of content and storytelling, and that we're actually walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And so that has been an interesting thing for us in general. And I think that those are very good examples and tangible examples that we are very, very proud of. And we don't always tout them, because this isn't about a PR play. It's about making sure that we actually have meaningful impact to the businesses and communities that we're focused on.
What are some of the results that you've seen? Like I know there's this 30% effort that's out there too, where a lot of the big retailers are saying we promise that 30% of the vendors that we're going to bring in are small businesses owned by minorities, and the impact that that's had on quite a few businesses has been profound. So doing things like the Black Friday business owner, what are some of the results of that? Like, did people see like sales quadruple?
Absolutely. So we had nearly 100x increase in the businesses that we were actually focused in our Black Friday program. Individuals, there's always a control group of individuals that were participating in the program and ones that weren't. We saw triple-digit increases associated with businesses that we actually showcased. We had a Buy Black Friday circular, digital circular that went out to be able to showcase individuals. And so, there's been tremendous results from that. And
that's like life altering for these businesses.
Well, the key is that, this is about utilizing entrepreneurship and innovation to be able to actually move the community forward. This isn't about just grants and scholarships and things of that nature. This is about teaching people the ability to be able to make their own way. And that, again, as I go back to the statement that I made earlier, we've got to be able to decrease the distance between innovation and execution. There are many different ideas that come from different places, young people in different communities, but they don't know how to bring them to life. So how do you actually give them the tools to be able to find their own path? Not everybody that is coming in or out of college or young people want a job at one of these large companies that we all work at. Some of them want their own opportunity, and leveraging our platforms in order to do so, we should give them a path to do that. That has been
many don't even know that there are roles within these companies that could be an interesting career path for them. And you were talking about access before. That's something that we've been doing as well. And in fact, I'm happy to offer access to some of your, as part of your program, to our digital e-learning, which is Digital Fundamentals, Programmatic. We have a lot of e-learning, and we've been giving students access to that for free. just to help them better understand how the digital ecosystem works. So we could talk about that offline, but happy to help there. So Alvin, we only have a couple minutes left, and the topic today was about moving from activity to progress. So what are some tips, things that companies be thinking about? So they're not just putting a lot of activity out there, but actually doing things that are trackable, measurable, meaningful efforts. What are some suggestions? What should companies start doing? What should they stop doing? Any thoughts there?
Yes, and so for me, I think that the key is doing the same thing and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. And so I think that we've done a great job of getting us to this point, but in order to get us to where we want to be, we need to do different things. And so if we're focusing on where are we getting our talent from, I think that individuals need to stop going to the same places that they've always gone to look for talent and expand the scope of where they're actually finding talent across all disciplines. And so whether that be at the university level and or in mid-career and senior level positions, individuals across different levels and disciplines can be found anywhere. And I think that this is one of the things that's interesting about our industry. We should welcome different perspectives from individuals that have either grown up in a different industry that can bring some of that fresh thinking to the things that we're actually doing here. That's the first thing. The second is, I think a lot of this stuff is just an everyday activity. I think that, I mentioned this at the early days of last year, and that there was a lot of talk around what can allies do. It isn't just about the community. And my response to that is that ally is a verb. It is a constant set of actions, not beliefs. And so the question is, in your everyday vernacular, no different than something like this conversation, what are we actually doing in our day-to-day activities that actually focusing on, if you really truly want to move the industry forward, what are you doing in your personal life? What are you doing with your personal team? Everyone has the opportunity to be able to actually move DEI in their own specific circles, whether that be through professional acumen, mentorship, and things of that nature. It doesn't always have to be a large, grandiose program that moves the needle of hundreds and thousands of people, but it does about changing hearts and minds. And I think that that is actually a very interesting thing that everyone can take to heart for themselves and make it their own.
Yeah, I think some of the things that you could be doing just on your own is educating yourself. There's a lot of great podcasts and books and all kinds of things out there that I know I've been listening to quite a few podcasts and reading books just so I could better understand what it's been like to be Black in America, what it's been like, to be the only person of color in a room and not see yourself, and trying to just understand better so that I can be more sensitive to that. I can be more thoughtful as a manager of people, and try and create an environment that really makes everyone feel valued. So I think there's things like that we all could be doing. So
Absolutely.
Alvin, thank you so much. Your work that you've been doing for years in this space, it really means a lot. I know both within Facebook and within the industry as a whole. I say we come back again next year to see what kind of progress we've made. Hopefully, we'll see a lot more diversity around the industry than we've seen in the past. And thank you so much for all the work that you do and for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate your continued focus on this, professionally and personally. Cheryl, I think that, your focus on this from really early days has meant a lot to me personally as a friend. So I want to say thank you personally, and you're on. Let's come back next year. Let's see how we're doing. Let's set some ambitious goals and see how we're doing across the board.
You got it. All right. Thanks, Alvin. Great.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was Alvin Bowles doing great work at Facebook and in the industry. I'm Cheryl Goldstein. Thanks for watching today. IAB There is a production of the Interactive Advertising Bureau. Our show today was produced by Connor Healy and John Ward. Have a great day.
IAB's next big event is ALM, the annual leadership meeting running the week of March 8th. To find out more, visit www.iab.com/events.